That went super smoothly, didn't it? What an entrance. What an opening. If you see that background jiggling, that is because I have some guest stars. My kittens are here and they want to play. You want to make an appearance on camera, guys? No, they just want to play with each other. Jack and Lily are back there. I am Chris. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I've got a ton of comic book news today. Some of it is really, really funny, crazy stuff. So I'm excited to share that with all of you. Got a few things to plug, including something from yours truly. That's pretty exciting. I'll get to that. We've got some comic books to review. Really totally stacked show. Really, really big. Hey, come here, cat. Come here. Ready? You're gonna boost my ratings. Who's this? This is Lily. Little Lily. You want to jump up there? She likes sometimes being on my shoulders. Nope, wants to play with her brother, I think. But anyway, we got Kitty here. Let's see if there's any reaction there. Yep, I think we've got a few folks in the chat room that are starting to take notice. Hello, everybody. Hello, A-Man. Hello, Gene. Hello, Brandon. Hello, Steve. Hello, Atomic Shane. That's the guy that runs the comic book store that I shop at. Nice to see you, Shane. Got a lot of fun news today. You can listen in if you've got time, because I know you do a live show tomorrow night on your Facebook channel, Atomic Comics, folks. That's in Tacoma, Washington. As you can see, my cats really want to play tonight. So this is going to be a little bit of a nutty show until I can calm them down. I don't know what's going on here. All right. Zach, thank you so much for the super chat. Oh, hi. Thanks for the stream, Chris. Have a comic on me. Also love the kitties. I love them too. They're totally bonkers. Come here, Jack. Nobody's seen you yet. This is Jack. So we've got Jack and Lily. Yup. William has it right here. Cat is going ham back there. Look at this. Look at this. This is just crazy. Oh, you're just going to sort of headbutt me with your butt? What would that even be called? Hello, Arsnoff. Hello, Pensador. Hello, Erica. Hello, Tit Goblin. Hello, Jamillan. Hello, Beowulf. Lovely to see everybody here. I'm so distracted with my cats. Tell you what, forget the cats. Nobody cares about cats, right? I mean, it's a meme. I don't know. Let's do a show. Let's go ahead and talk about some comics that came out this week. It was actually a pretty small week for me. So let me add something to my stream here. We're going to add that and change up the view. Yeah, I think that looks nice. I think that looks pretty darn good. I keep getting distracted because I feel like they're going to do something like knock something over somehow or like pull the screen down, which I guess honestly wouldn't be the end of the world. The show can continue. But I definitely have some kittens back here that are going ham. Tell you what, first comic here that I picked up this week, Radiant Black, issue 21, written by Kyle Higgins, art, as always, by Marcelo Costa, inks by Eduardo Ferragato, colors by Raul Angulo. This was a fun issue because it went back to something that I do enjoy in this book, which is the interpersonal relationships of the lead characters. A little bit more of the melodrama, the soap opera. I do like that in Radiant Black quite a bit. I think it's some of what makes it a classic comic. Reminds me of, Spider-Man and some of the best comics that Marvel was putting out in the 60s and 70s, but updated for today. Here's the two things I'd love to see more, though, at this point. Maybe a little bit more focus on when it's time for an action scene. Let's see something bigger. Let's see some big robots that they're fighting and stuff. I feel like the fights are a little small. I'd love a little bit more action, but whatever. These are minor complaints. The art is good. The story has some interesting twists and turns here where there's sort of two leads to this story, best friends. And at this point, they're sharing the Radiant Black Powers, but the Radiant Black Powers are also doing something interesting and new. They're fritzing out occasionally, which is really bad when they were flying through the sky. Fun comic, though. If you like fun superhero stuff, this is classic superhero stuff. It's good. Here's superhero stuff with a little bit of a twist. Minor Threats, final issue of a 4-issue series, co-written by both Jordan Blum and Patton Oswalt. Maybe not as funny as you'd expect with Patton Oswalt involved, although it does have humor. It follows some sea-level bad guys that have to team up when everything is going wrong. But I can't give away too much of this because there are some twists and turns to this final issue. Made it very satisfying. Good character work, fun world building, fun stuff that you haven't seen done before. Artwork by Scott Hepburn, fantastic. Easily the kind of stuff you could see in a mainstream Marvel or DC superhero book. I'm just saying that in terms of, hey, they tend to pay the best rates. But yeah, it's a really fun comic, very satisfying, told in 4 issues, story's complete, could continue. Very satisfying conclusion, though. Only one more that I picked up in terms of basically what was on the racks this week, and that was Demon Wars. That's the latest version of Peach Momoko's take on Marvel comics. So what do I mean by that? It remixes a lot of Marvel characters to mix in Japanese folklore. Oni and yokai, monsters and ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. So it gives us something a little familiar, a little new. If you like Peach Momoko's art, that's probably the main selling point. Co-scripting duties by Zach Davison. He writes comics. He translates Japanese comics. It's fun, but I think I more like it for the art than the story. You gonna talk? The cats want to talk to you, folks. Look at this. We've got another super chat. Steve says, does Ian McKay make an appearance in Minor Threats? Fair enough. No, this is not Minor Threat the band. That was Minor Threats the comic. But who else said that? Oh, no, TJ Rip said that they enjoyed the comic and the finale with the Insomniac, who is a superhero that kind of goes off the rails. Do I have there? Sends chat here that by a YouTuber Strange Brain Parts as a great channel. Oh, that's so nice to hear. That's really cool. I'll have to look that up. I was not aware, so you're informing me of something new. I like it. That was it. I also picked this up, but this is not necessarily anything you haven't seen before. Invincible on Deluxe. All it is, issue 1 without the colors. Oh, we got a cameo here. We got a little cameo. Who's peeking out of the curtain? I'm a huge fan of Cory Walker's art. Really, really big fan. And even though this is 20 years old at this point, and he's definitely evolved, it is interesting to look at his artwork without any gradients, without any color splashes, just the art. It's fun, but it's really for big fans of Invincible or big fans of Cory Walker. I'm both, so I get that. Let's see. Steve says, damn, Chris, I thought I'd stump you with that there. Well, thank you for the super chat, buddy. That's you. I appreciate it. And somebody jumps in here and saying hello to everybody in the chat room. So thank you, Ashley. There's a few other things that I have been reading this week that I just thought I'd highlight and give like quick thoughts on. I'm trying to get through this because I've got a lot of news that I want to talk about. But I've picked up That Texas Blood. This has been recommended to me many, many times as a good crime comic. People know that I like crime comics. I'm only about a chapter in. I like it so far. Good art, very much in the vein of Jacob Phillips' father, Sean Phillips, but that works in a crime comic. Stark, but grounded, clear, moody, atmospheric, lots of good adjectives. And the pacing is strong, and the setting is strong. It definitely reminds me a little of like a Coen Brothers crime movie, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Let's see. Jay Muse, to jump back to the last book I was looking at, says that just picked up the Invincible Compendium, loving it, and can't wait to pick up the other two. Yeah, great, easy way to read the whole story. I think Invincible is definitely a very fun, cool superhero comic. And what it does differently is it definitely subverts tropes. It has all sorts of characters and settings and stuff that you've seen before. But what it basically does is, even though the art seems kind of innocent and maybe a little cartoony or bright, at least with the coloring, it goes into some pretty dark places here and there in terms of at least violence. But yeah, so I'm enjoying this. I'll probably continue to read that. I've been reading a lot of manga lately. I guess I've just felt like doing binge, and reading manga tankobon is one of the most satisfying ways to just read through a story, get going at it like a really fast pace, and just like read. At least when you can discover stuff that's already come out. And I've heard lots of great things about Slam Dunk. I just finished volume 6. Boy, volume 5 of this was incredible. Volume 5 was the entire book was just part of a basketball game. And it was so action-packed. It was so fast-paced. It was amazing. Just incredible. Funny, too. Very funny, because it deals with like relationship stuff. The main character isn't the brightest. He's also got an ego. It's funny. I really, really am enjoying Slam Dunk these days. Another manga that I'm reading that I like parts of, Chainsaw Man. So that's super popular right now. So I was curious what all the hubbub was about. And it's a cool premise, and it's really good art. I don't always find the characters that likable. It's a pretty it's a little bit nihilistic, honestly. It's a world full of some bad guys, but I did want to find one piece of artwork that I was impressed by. Let me see if I can find that. Oh yeah, okay. I'll show that to you in 2 seconds. Let me acknowledge this. Thank you, TJ Rip. Sincerely appreciate the support. The reason I can do shows like Comic Tropes and even this Pros and Cons is sincerely at this point because of donations and Patreon support and sponsorships. I would say the YouTube revenue kind of mid at best, not so impressive. But let me go back to this. I like this double page spread here. It might be a little confusing if you don't already have the context you're not reading through, but Chainsaw Man is fighting a guy called, I think, Samurai Sword. Essentially, they both have sharp arms and a head with a blade, but they've jumped out of a building here, and I just was really impressed. I'm sure that Tatsuki Fujimoto and his assistants took a long time rendering this city. That's very clean, crisp line art here for the background. Some really great amount of debris and detail here, showing some motion. And from what I've heard, spreads like this become more and more common throughout this. So I do like the artwork quite a bit. I think it's got some energy to it, but some detail. It really it psychs me up when I'm reading it. I don't love the story. I don't dislike the story, but that's not the main selling point to me. I do like the art. So Chainsaw Man's interesting, little nihilistic, but cool. And people have been asking me forever to read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm into part 2 now, volume 2. This book is bonkers. This is one where I like the story, don't personally love the artwork. There's a guy in American comics named Frank Robbins. In the 70s, I want to say, at least the Bronze Age, he did a book called Invaders, Captain America, Human Torch, Namor, set in World War II. He did other stuff too, like Daredevil. Frank Robbins would draw people with the craziest poses, just contorted in the strangest ways. And Hirohiko Araki does the same stuff. These poses are just bonkers. I'm trying to think of like find one that's like especially weird. Okay. So here's a guy sort of like, yeah, like it's just weird, like limbs all akimbo. It's so weird. I don't hate it actually. It grows on you a little bit, but it is very awkward. The poses are just so surreal, but I do like the story, which involves, how do I describe it? Almost like these godlike vampires here and there, and the good guys can sort of master a breathing technique that gives you access to like definitely super strength, but also like insanely accurate coordination. Like JoJo in this book can do like, there's a scene where some corrupt cops are disrespecting him, and he just like shakes up a bottle of it and hits the cap in such a way that it goes at such a fast rate it actually breaks an officer's finger. He just can do crazy things like that. Or like he kicks his Haman energy into a cactus at one point, and the needles shoot out and pin flies against a wall. It's just insane stuff. But that's, if you can master these breathing techniques, you can do some really crazy stuff. But the art is just bizarre. So someday I'll review this, folks. Boy, oh boy, is it weird and violent. But as I delve deeper into comic book history, this stuff comes from. The over the top violence and stuff like that. There's other influences too, but things like Fist of the North Star and Lone Wolf and Cub. Excuse me. Oh, that hurts. I'll explain why in a sec. Anyway, it's interesting reading tons and tons of manga all at once because you start to see the influences a little bit. Yeah, I've heard this. Haman was okay, but I guess eventually they get powers called stands, and people like that stuff a little bit more. I've definitely heard that. Critique. Void says, has the art improved from the last couple of books? Yeah, by the time you're in volume 2, it is a little bit more clear, at least, panel to panel, but it's still very surreal. Very surreal. I'm going to draw something today. A comic strip. I've actually already started drawing. I'm just going to ink it, I should say. Let me explain. A couple reasons why I'm doing this. I used to do a comic strip about 10 years ago called Star Trek Problems that would just point out some of the silly stuff in the Star Trek shows and movies. My throat is really dry. Give me a sec. Thank you, Michael, for the super chat and the kind words. Pardon me, folks. I don't know why my mouth is, or I should say my throat is so dry. I've had plenty of water today, but it's really dry. You like that, right? That's popular on YouTube. I need a minute. Okay. Thank you, Steve. He says that the stands in JoJo are better, and he recommends people hit the like button. Hey, if you've got a minute to like on this video, I won't say no. That stuff. I don't think I've got a cold for Angie. I really don't. I just Man, it's really dry. All of a sudden. Maybe I'm talking too fast or too loud or something like that. Anyway, I used to do a comic strip, okay? It was called Star Trek Problems, blah, blah, blah. I made hundreds of them on a friend's website. It's not up anymore. This was a long time ago. But I had a lot of fun making those. I haven't drawn stuff like that in years, but I had an idea today, and I was like, there's two good reasons to do this. One, we've got Picard Season 3 coming out in like a couple weeks or something like that. So I've got a gag based on the Picard show that I'll show you guys by the end of the show. And then second, that friend that I'm talking about today launched a tabletop game that he's been working on for several years. So let me actually remove this, add something here. Whoops. Did I add it? Added it and took away. Let's add it back. There we go. There we go. Good one, Tobers. The Ghost Pepper's ghost is haunting your throat. Exactly. So let me plug something from my buddy here. So his game is called Street Wolves, tabletop role-playing game. It's basically set in sort of an 80s synthwave world. Today is the day that it comes out for sale. It doesn't cost much. If you're curious about something like that, if that's stuff you play with your friends, strongly recommend it. You can get it at tablecatgames.com. It's part of the Savage Worlds like rules, I guess, but you know, whatever. It talks you through what you need if you go to Table Cat Games. I think don't quote me on it. It might only be $20. I don't know exactly. I'm not an expert, but I've seen the game. It's really cool. And I wanted to sort of honor my friend by doing something that we worked on together. And as long as I'm plugging stuff, I wanted to plug another thing for a friend of mine. My buddy Randy makes comics on Kickstarter. Today he passed his goal, but it's still got 17 days to go. So if you want to get in on a comic series that is already successfully funded, this is to fund issues 2 and 3, but you can also get issue 1, which he already released in a previous Kickstarter. It's called Bullet Adventures. It's about a super speedster. Great artwork in it, sincerely. So, you know, just an easy way to get in on an already funded comic book. It's already drawn and everything. Randy fulfills stuff really quickly in my experience, so I definitely recommend it. Let's see. Thank you, Kevin O'Connor, for the super chat. I sincerely appreciate that. That's really, really nice of you. So I plugged a few things for friends, and I'm going to sort of peck away at like drawing while I talk to you all about the comic book news of the week. And there was a lot. Let's start with something kind of funny, in my opinion. Oh, look, Randy's here. That's so nice to see. Thank you, Randy. Happy to plug your work. I sincerely think you're making some good comics. I hope some folks jump on that. Again, it's called Bullet Adventures on Kickstarter. So, oh, look at this. Bullet Adventures is also up for Sequential Magazine's Best Comic Book. Hey, congratulations, buddy. Tell you what, you know what? Before I go too far, I'll plug myself. I got a crowdfunding thing coming up pretty soon. It's not a comic. I haven't had to sit down and do that yet, but it is pretty cool. It's something some of you have been exposed to. It will be for a variant cover for Vampirella Year 1. I've already drawn it. I've already had it colored. It's been accepted. And they're going to do an Indiegogo campaign, they being Dynamite Comics. Dynamite Comics gave me this opportunity. So that's exciting, I think. They're going to, hey, it's all done. If you guys want to sort of just have something that I worked on, I drew a comic book cover. I would love to see how far we could go with this. It ain't going to be too much because it's just one comic cover. And by the way, it's called Vampirella Year 1. So if you don't really know the character, and I have made an episode about it on Comic Tropes, if you're curious, but it's a good jumping on point for getting her origin. It's going to be for issue 6. I'll have more details on that soon. Okay. I'll have more details on that soon. We're going to launch that soon. But I feel like with how many people watch Comic Tropes, which is more than even subscribed, and with folks like you here, maybe we could even sell more of this variant cover than the regular cover that goes direct to comic stores. I don't know. I think that maybe that's crazy. Maybe I'm thinking too big, but I think that there might be a chance that we could all sort of sell more copies of that. And if something like that were to happen, I feel like it would be easier to carve out some time to justify for making some of my comic projects that I've wanted to share with you guys for years. It's a little bit of a grind for me making YouTube just because I do still have a part-time job. And when I say part-time, that's still 30 hours a week instead of 40. So my time is limited. For instance, at Christmas, I got like a PlayStation 5. I haven't even had time to hook it up, let alone play it. It's work, work, work. But it's fun work most of the time. I can do this stuff. Yes, Andrew Jefferson asks a question, and that is correct. Christopher Priest writing it. I think he's written a lot of great comics. He's done some weird stuff when he was like a young guy, but he's written a lot of great comics. He definitely has. I mean, Spider-Man Wolverine, that's a good story. What it did for Hobgoblin, I don't love. But in and of itself, was a great story. And he wrote a lot of great stuff. Quantum and Woody at Valiant, that was a good title. He that was funny. He's done some great stuff. He really has. So we'll see what happens. What was the first comic to use the Year One subtitle? Pretty sure that would have been Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. I'd never heard Year One used before that. That was 1986, I want to say. Anyway, I'm excited, and I'll be sharing information on that project when it comes out. We'll try to like maybe have a few sort of like stretch goals that maybe we could do. Maybe we'll do like just a few remarks. It's where I would draw an individual drawing on one. Maybe we'll do at least a few of those. We'll see. It's hard to guess what the support level would be because I've never done anything crowdfunding. But I've got a pretty good following, and I think that I've created a cover that's like pretty funny and interesting and cool. I think folks will like it. We'll see. Let's get back to the news. This is pretty funny to me. This is pretty funny. You see that image there? That is from the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark musical. Chrissy and I saw that on Broadway. I want to say that musical has a bad reputation, and it had its problems behind the scenes. I sincerely don't think it was bad. I sincerely had a great time at that. And we went in, by the way, like we did not go with like plans like we got to see Spider-Man on Broadway. No, we were in New York. We were looking for something different to do that day. You can get sort of leftover seats for different Broadway shows at the last minute, and they're discounted. We were like, what's playing right now? Spider-Man was playing. I'm like, I like Spider-Man. Are you up for it? Chrissy's like, yeah, I'm up for it. We had a good time. I think the music was fun. Story is a little weird, but the costumes were so over the top. It did fail ultimately because of some behind the scenes stuff. It was not managed by the right people. It wasn't managed by people that knew how to do musicals. So they wasted money. I think I'd like to do a Comic Tropes episode on the history of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark with the unique perspective that I saw it, and I don't think it was bad. I sincerely don't. I think it got some bad press, and it didn't use its money effectively, but with the right sort of marketing and the right producers, that could have legit been a hit. I do think that. But why is this in the news now? Because it's in the news because of a politician. And I don't really necessarily make my show political, but this is kind of funny news. I don't know how many of you know about Representative George Santos, Republican from New York, right? He's been caught saying a bunch of really obviously easily fact-checked lies, a lot. And his latest involves Spider-Man. But here are just some of the highlights of his lies. With he would have graduated college in just 2 years, not 4. Also said that he went to a college that there's no record of him attending. He said that he was a volleyball star there. No record of volleyball there. There's by the way. Said he founded an animal charity. There's no history or social media accounts or anything about this animal charity. He said that his mother died from the 9/11 attacks. There's no evidence to support that. He said that his grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. There's no evidence that that is true. But recently it came out that he had told some donors that he was a producer of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, which is such a weird lie because, first of all, easy to disprove. He did not have anything to do with this musical. He's also, I guess, said in the past that he was on Hannah Montana, and he was never on like that show. So he tells some really big, crazy whoppers. It's got to be something like compulsive, right? It's got to be an issue at this point. Like, he's just told so many crazy ones. It's hilarious. It's hilarious to read a list. But also, if you were going to say that you produced a musical, why would you choose one that kind of was infamous, right? That failed. Despite me saying it's good, the fact is, it didn't last that many years. It failed. Why would you say that that was the one you worked on? I don't know. I thought that was funny. That was in the news this week. I wanted to comment on it. Why would you brag about that, right? Yeah, I worked on, I was a producer on Morbius. Aside from this YouTube thing, folks, just want you to know, I was one of the executive producers that really believed in Morbius. And you know, I'm just so proud that I worked on that, me personally. I just thought this was a good opportunity to talk about it. Yeah. Andy, lovely to have you here as always. Heisman Trophy winner, right? He's won more Grammys than Beyonce. He's got more touchdowns and Super Bowl wins than Tom Brady. It's George Santos, producer of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. No, Mars, I did not already do an episode about the musical, but I think I will. It'll take longer than usual to make because that will be a little tricky to find footage that I would be allowed to use in a review, but I'll do it. I'll do it at some point. Wait a minute. Let's see. Archmage Frey says, just wanted to let you all know I invented comic tropes. I think we all know that George Santos invented the show Comic Tropes. Got it to 1 million subscribers before I took over and brought that all the way down to 200,000. He knows the secret of levitation. Yeah, he taught Harry Houdini. Santos was the first man to walk on the moon. Not only that, he was the first man to walk on the sun. So a lot of great accomplishments there. I believe his political career is probably the days are numbered because he's just been caught in so many lies that you know, if I said that I produced Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, does that necessarily affect how effective I am as a politician? No, not necessarily. One doesn't necessarily have to do with the other. But if you're going to tell lie after lie after lie, how are your constituents possibly going to be able to trust you? Well, this one is true, actually. Jamil might have been making a joke, but that one is true. George Santos did discover America. Oh, Santos wasn't just the first man on the moon. Comic Care explains he was the first man. That's an impressive accomplishment. By the way, why was he the producer of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark? That's because George Santos was Spider-Man. Yeah, when he was a teenager, he actually was Spider-Man. I'm the uncredited director of the unforgettable Fantastic Four. Oh, the one by Trank? Yeah. Santos personally shot down the Chinese spy balloon. These are all facts, folks. I'm just sharing with you the things that my really smart audience knows. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. You designed the sweatshirt? I thought that it was Teddy Fresh, but okay, you designed it. This could literally go on for an hour and we'd probably have fun. But why don't I move on? Because I've got some other pretty fun news. This one was one that made me go, huh? Let me see. Can I make myself bigger here? I'll just show this. I went, hmm? All right. So, Valiant Comics apparently met with Dane Cook. Dane Cook. Do you remember Dane Cook? About 20 years ago, he was definitely a very successful stand-up comedian. Not my personal favorite, but you know what? That's fine. I don't have to like everything. Valiant Comics these days is publishing one title a month. Let me see what this. Yeah, I like that a little better. Valiant is trying to be cost effective and stuff. They're only publishing one title a month. That's a fact. Well, this week, Dane Cook tweeted, had a great meeting with Valiant Comics. Tons of wild and wonderful possibilities. Nothing geeks me out more than a killer origin tale. My question is, what am I missing? What does Dane Cook have to do with Valiant Comics or comic books in general? I understand he's a comic, and I understand comics. Hey, we just talked about Patton Oswalt wrote Minor Threats, right? Dane Cook, I wouldn't really say that his star is where it used to be, and that's like not really showing shade, throwing shade. I'm not trying to throw shade on the guy. As I understand it, he does still have an active career. He tours. I'm pretty sure he does like Twitch game streaming, video game streaming. I think it's not really something I'd watch, but that's what I heard. But if we are to take this at face value, which I'm sure is true, right? I'm sure that he did with Valiant. But what would Valiant want Dane Cook to work on out of their properties? Exo Manowar? Bloodshot? Ninjak? I just don't quite see what experience Dane Cook has in writing fictional stories that lends itself to working at Valiant. But then again, if I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, I also wouldn't necessarily have known that Bruce Campbell would do such a good job on Grunt Rock versus the Army of the Dead. And I think he is doing a good job on it. So, I don't know. Maybe he can do something good, surprise me. Makoto says, Dane Cook, Jim Shooter fist fight. Yeah. He got famous enough to get his foot into the movies. Yeah. I mean, I think he went to Comic-Con, the San Diego Comic-Con around maybe 2007, I'm going to say, to promote one of his movies. Probably Good Luck Chuck. Which also just sort of beggars the question of, Comic-Con, what are you thinking? Why is Comic-Con the place to promote non-superhero movies? I don't know. Wait a minute. Dane Cook was in a superhero movie. I just remembered this. He was in Mystery Men. Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo. He had a cameo in that movie. He was just starting to come up. I don't remember what his gimmick was, but he was part of the people auditioning to join the Mystery Men. I just remembered that. So maybe he's been into comics for a long time. You know what? Point here. Brian Posehn wrote a decent Deadpool story. I'd say better than decent. But Brian Posehn has also always been into comics, just like his buddy Patton Oswalt. Maybe Dane Cook has been into it too. Okay, people are a bunch of people said this. He was the Waffler. Is that a coincidence? Like he was just up and coming, that was him getting his foot into Hollywood? Or has Dane Cook always been into comics and it's just taken him a while to work on them? I don't know. I think Black Phoenix has it right, though. I think the most likely scenario is we're going to get, more in the Valiant universe. We already got Vin Diesel as Bloodshot. The next movie in that universe, Dane Cook as Ninjak. Maybe a cameo by Vin. But as long as I'm talking about that, let me just mention, it's Bloodshot, the movie, wasn't that bad either. It wasn't great. But I think it really got hit hard as it was like the last big movie to come out just as the pandemic just hit everything and started shutting everything down. It might have done better if it had been released, say, a month earlier or something like that. It might have. I can't say for sure. No way to know. I saw it. I didn't think the story was that bad. I really didn't. Says Dane Cook is also the name of a river in Vietnam in the film Tropic Thunder. I don't remember that. Tropic Thunder is pretty funny. Too late to catch you up now, Meow Nian. Too late to catch you up now. No, I'm just getting into the news. What else have we got here? Let's go back here. I think we've riffed on this Dane Cook stuff enough. This is fun. See this image here? That is chain being projected on somebody's house with a humongous projector. Let me do something here. I'm going to add something. This is funny, I think. I'm adding a screen here if I can get it. Where is it? Okay. Hold on, I'm opening a window so that I can do something. Yeah, share. All right. There we go. Is it playing? No, it looks like, huh. Oh, there we go. There we go. Let me adjust where the screen is. So yeah, this is something that they hate anime, so they decided to project Chainsaw Man against their entire house. That's what you're seeing there, is the Chainsaw Man anime being projected against some poor soul's house. And the lights are on in that house, so they definitely are seeing flashes of light. I don't know what's going on here. It's definitely one of the weirder sort of pranks I guess I've seen. I just wanted to share that. I got a kick out of this. Can you imagine? Like, what is this? This is like, 10 p.m. or something. You see these like flashing lights. You're like, what's going on? You go outside and you see Chainsaw Man being projected against your house. You're like, I hate anime. Maybe this is why he hates anime. Maybe people keep doing this to him. But I got a kick out of that. I thought I'd share it. This came from an account called Perfect Shot. Is that Chainsaw Man Perfect Shot? I don't know. I really don't know. I thought I'd share it. It was weird. All right, good. I'm not the only one that got a kick out of that. Thank you, Dr. Schubill. How many lumens do you want for your projector? Yes. I mean, the guy made his neighbor's house into a drive-in movie theater. I would have liked to have seen the rest of the neighborhood just ride their bikes up and just watch Chainsaw Man. It's pretty good. I wish someone projected Chainsaw Man on my house so I can finally watch it. Yeah. We've got a bunch more news, folks. Let's see. Let me get back to my my lovely PowerPoint. Just so professional, isn't it? Just wanted to. Come on. Oh, there we go. There we go. Struggling these graphics. Here's one. Ha ha ha. I'm doing all these jokes. Dane Cook at Valiant. Chainsaw Man projected against a house. Hard cut here. Let's talk about somebody's valuable comics getting stolen. So this one ain't as funny, but we were talking about Mystery Men a second ago. Well, that was created by Bob Burden, who also created the Flaming Carrot. Bob Burden apparently had his personal storage locker robbed. They don't give an exact date in any of the news. They just said this is coming out now, but I guess it was robbed back in either late December, early January. And he has asked folks in his area to keep an eye out because he had some very valuable comics stolen. Apparently, it's in a town in Georgia called Chambly. I don't know anything about that town, but okay. Some of the stolen items here: runs of Tales of Suspense and Tales to Astonish from the 50s through the 90s. That's some definitely like valuable stuff just before Marvel really, just as Marvel was moving out of being Atlas and being Marvel Comics. Golden and Silver Age titles like Lois Lane #2 and 3, Cyclone Comics #1, early issues of Terry Toons and Crazy Comics. A lot of older stuff, valuable older stuff that he says was in really good condition, like, 7s or 8s for a lot of this stuff. So, yeah, not a comic book store being robbed this time. That's the difference. Now we're robbing actual comic book creators. I tried to do more research to find other news articles to see, like, for instance, did the criminals break into several storage lockers and his happened to be hit? Or was this targeted? None of the news articles really mention that. They just say that he was robbed and that he's asking people in that area to keep an eye out for those comics. I think he also said he had like some early Miss Marvels and Captain Marvels, stuff like that. Yeah, I know. I don't love reporting on the comic book robberies, but my thinking is let's spread some awareness because I never know if, like, all of a sudden one of you guys happens to live in the Chambly, Georgia area, and you're like, gee, that's strange. Like, I was in a pawn shop last week and there were a ton of old comics all of a sudden. You never know. It can't hurt to spread the word. I like Bob Burden's stuff. Flaming Carrot's funny. I don't have tons of his comics, but I do have the ones where the Ninja Turtles crossed over because I'm a Ninja Turtles fan. Yeah, Mystery Men is weird because it doesn't have Flaming Carrot in it, but it is an interesting movie. It's still kind of funny. Yeah, I hope so too, Clay. That's a good point. I hope it had cameras. Mine does. Plus, it has a gate. I wish I knew. Oh, Chambly is in Atlanta. It's part of the Atlanta area. Got it. Did not know that. Probably should have looked at a map. That would have involved too much preparation. I like to prepare for this show by getting news stories, maybe doing some drawing, but hey, I don't want to prepare too much. Then you guys would expect me to always have a good episode, I got to have some wiggle room so that I can eventually just sort of crank out a stinker every once in a while, and no one will be surprised. There, yep. Probably didn't have that on your bingo card. Chris cranks out a stinker. I'm just doing a little inking here, and I'll show you what I do when I finish the episode. It'll be a treat for everybody. Let's see. Some follow-up comments on me. Mystery Men is great. Maps are for nerds. I like Mystery Men. And here's a controversial one. I would hate to be robbed. Hello, Terry. Hello, Out of Voida. Bob is great. I did a short Mystery Men story with him a bunch of years back. My story featured the Gasser. Really? It's possible I could have read that, and I'm not remembering it off the top of my head, but I don't think I did. That's cool. That's really cool that you got to work on that stuff. I think that that's some important indie comics history, Mystery Men and Flaming Carrot. I definitely think it's important. Yes, Joel, don't worry. I'm going to get there. I've got some Ed Brubaker news eventually. In fact, it's not the next piece of news. A couple weeks ago, I talked about some Webtoon news. Well, more like tangentially related to Webtoon. Specifically, what I talked about was the fact that there had been a study in South Korea by their health department of the government, talking about how web comic creators were disproportionately affected with health issues. And it was a serious, serious issue. Well, one of the bigger Webtoon production sort of studios, a place called, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Cacao Entertainment, they have announced that they are updating their contract to say that creators can now take 2 breaks every 40 to 50 chapters. That goes into effect this month. Now, let's put that into context real quick. What is every 40 to 50 chapters? If you're making webtoons, by the way, in South Korea, the most popular way to read comics. It's huge in South Korea. It's growing here fast, but it's humongous in South Korea, just to be clear. It's weekly. So what they're saying is you can take 2 breaks, take a week off, twice a year. I don't know. I guess that's better than before. I mean, I think it's still up to the creator what they can do, but this means that they'll still get paid or something like that, or they're trying to take some of the pressure off of them. I'll be honest. It doesn't sound like that much to me. It doesn't sound like that much. 2 breaks every, we'll say the best case scenario in this, 2 breaks every 40 weeks. It's not that much vacation time. Now, I don't really take a whole lot of vacation time on what I do either, but it's a little weird. I'm going to recap some of those health results, but I wanted to acknowledge, thank you, Andrew Jefferson. Which hero would least likely get caught, would be least likely to get caught if you hypothetically committed a hypothetical crime? Punisher, Rorschach, Dog Welder. Which hero would be least likely to get caught? Oh, to get caught by. Excuse me. Which hero would be least likely to get caught by if I created a crime? I'd be least likely to get caught by Dog Welder out of those. Who else? There are some superheroes that have way too specific an area of expertise. Green Lantern and Nova are solving space crimes. So if I robbed a comic book store, pretty sure Green Lantern ain't coming after me. He'd be the least likely to come after me. Let's go back to this news real quick. Thank you again, though, Andrew. That's fun, and I appreciate the super chat. I'll just read the results. They did a survey. It showed that 28.7% of the respondents out of the pool of Webtoon creators had depression. 17.3% considered committing, unaliving themselves. And the national average is only 10.7%. So 7% higher is statistically significant in the case. And we even had some worse stories about creators having, I think some sort of a blood clot that killed them. One lady miscarried. The pressure to produce is very high. I would argue too high. Too high. Punisher went after jaywalkers in one story, but boy, did it influence how people perceived Punisher. I think it was written by Bill Mantlo in a Spider-Man story that also involved Cloak and Dagger, if I'm remembering correctly. And he had Punisher really going off the rails, shooting at people for accidentally littering, shooting at people for jaywalking. That was definitely the craziest Punisher was depicted. It was a lot. Anyway, good on Cacao Entertainment on one level for trying to add something to the contract to protect their producers, their content creators. I don't really love calling artists content creators, actually. That feels very awkward to me. It feels mercenary. But also, I don't know if that's enough. That doesn't sound like a lot to me. Do you guys think that, say, 2 weeks off every 40 weeks would be enough for, a creative field like this? Or should they be doing more? I mean, I guess you could always argue a place can do more, but I don't feel like that's much. I really don't. Maybe I'm the weirdo here, though. Thank you, Mian. Overwork and burnout is way too common a problem in the world, and especially East Asia. I know in Japanese there's a word for work to death. Is there really? I don't think I know that, but yeah, it is. It is a concern. I know that. Yeah, manga creators definitely work themselves too hard, in my opinion. Makoto says, people idealize Japan's comic scene, but to me, sometimes it's just too hostile to creators and kind of quantity over quality at times. You're not wrong. I know that the creator of, what do you call it? My Hero Academia had to take another couple weeks off right now, which is considered uncommon, but he's got health concerns, And it's like, people are like, oh, wow, you're taking a week or two off because you're sick. And it's like, yeah, bro, sometimes you have to, especially in a creative field. Imagine trying to produce something good when you're not feeling well. It's like, if you're not feeling well and, my job is working in an office, I used to suck it up and go into work all the time when I worked in an office, all the time, when it was like doing marketing work, when I, just had to maybe attend a couple meetings, but mostly just like work on computers, do graphic design, coordinate things, come up with plans. I could do it sick, Now my part-time job is I'm selling cars to people. I can't do that when I'm feeling sick. If I'm feeling a little sick, it's, first of all, that makes people nervous. They could be grossed out. I take time off when I'm sick. Wow, look at this. Just to let you know, your hard work and enthusiasm got me back into reading comics. You're doing more good than you know. Speaking of burnout in Webtoons, I hope you find your balance with YouTube because you're great. Thank you, Etienne. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm working on it. I'm working on it because, boy, would I like to do a little bit more than just analysis of comics. I definitely have some ideas I'd like to try to put out into the world. And where do you find the time? What do you sacrifice? Let's see. You're not weird, Chris. People need time off. Health, both physical and mental, are important. People should have regular time off away from their jobs. Some countries are way better than others. Japan might work their workforce the most in a way, and not like legal obligations, but like culturally, I think that there's an obligation to perform and just be there, at least to be there. And I think America ain't that far behind in a lot of areas. Not every field, but a lot of fields. I think that we have like an unreasonable expectation to just not take time off, not use the vacation time that you're entitled to. Let's see. Diana, lovely to see you here. When I was teaching, they'd get the students sick. Yeah, right? Because it's like, oh, don't take the time off. We need you in there. Doesn't matter if you're going to get somebody else sick. It's not feasible in the long term. My understanding is that a bunch of first world countries in Europe tend to give the most medical vacation and certainly parental leave. That's a big one too. I would be very curious to see if anywhere in the comics world, digital comics, manga, bande dessinée, American comics, do any of them have anything where they're going to give parental leave? Because I'm going to guess probably nothing anywhere in those fields. I'm going to guess that there's, maybe if you're like, an office employee at Marvel or DC, they probably, because, they work for Disney, they work for, Discovery, they probably get benefits, including like some parental leave. But I bet you anything that most comics people do not get parental leave. I bet that they don't. Yeah, look at all these people like saying stuff like that. Scandinavian supremacy. Are the countries like Norway and Sweden and Denmark and stuff, are they usually the best with the leave policies? What would be interesting is to sincerely do a study within several specific industries and say, okay, which countries have the best and which have the worst leave policies for either being sick or just needing vacation and stuff, and then ping that against what's their production level. Like, because I have to imagine that that most employees will work a little harder if they get a good amount of time off for both mental and physical health, because we've all got things to do. Here in America, like we started building ourselves off of like the idea of like a one income household, right? Usually the man goes to work, wife stays at home, takes care of the kids, cooks the food and stuff like that. There's a lot of value to that. As soon as you take somebody out of the house and you have those responsibilities, that's expensive to pay for childcare, pay for like meal preparation, pay for like maids cleaning and stuff. That adds up fast. But we're at a point where most people have to have a dual income household to support a family. And yet wages are stagnant versus the cost of living increases of inflation. I'll stop now because we're starting to get into some arguably dull number stuff. Let's talk about comics. Thank you for going with me down that long path. I know I went way down that path. I don't have an easy answer for any of these questions, by the way. I really don't. I'm just curious, specifically in comics, how we can potentially help the health of comic book artists and writers and colorists and letterers and the production staff, editors, all of that. It's the industry I care about. It's the artistic field I love. And I want those people to be healthy so that they can continue to hopefully create comics as long as they want. That makes me happy. I'll move on. Hello, Rojas. Here it is, some Ed Brubaker news. I love Ed Brubaker. I love Sean Phillips. I love them as a team. They are my favorite comic book team. I will just say that. They are my favorite team. I love their books. Mostly they do crime comics together. And out of that, the big feather in their cap that most people know about, and with good reason, is definitely Criminal. Well, a lot more people are probably going to discover how good Criminal is. Why? Because there's apparently a TV series based on adapting Criminal. If you haven't read Criminal before, first of all, I strongly recommend it. It's one of my personal favorite comics. Ed Brubaker himself sort of explains the idea of Criminal, saying Criminal tells the interweaving saga of several generations of families tied together by the crimes and murders of the past. That's a fair way of saying it. Each sort of story arc is focused on different characters, but they definitely have connections. It's cool. It's non-linear, but you always get a full story at a time. Anyway, if this happens, well, Ed Brubaker is going to serve as both executive producer and showrunner. Ed's done a little bit of work in Hollywood for sure. Some projects haven't seen fruition, but he's written and produced a few things. I don't have his IMDb in front of me. Again, that would need some preparation. But I'm so excited by this. I love their work. I think that this is a great series. I cannot wait for it to become a TV show. I have a lot of faith in them adapting it well. Yes, high five to Ed and Sean. And from me, the double salute. That's right. I give Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips a double salute. Yeah, Out of Voida says, criminal is criminally good. Oh, Steven Soderbergh? If he wants to direct an episode, that would work. That would really work. Yes. Been a Brubaker fan since An Accidental Death in Dark Horse Presents. That was Dark Horse Presents, I think, was his first work in comics. If it wasn't his very first, it was close to his very first. The only Marvel comic I've seen of Sean Phillips is Marvel Zombies. Well, that's very fun, but his style of drawing with like real heavy shadows against people's faces and the way he draws women with like an old fashioned style, boy, does it fit like noir, mystery. Just perfect. There is a great Sean Phillips art book that Dynamite published that's still out there. Great book. If you just want to try to understand and appreciate it. Boy, is he good. Yes, that's the next big question, Spike. The next thing is, when does the Paste Pop Pete TV show come? Let's just say by 2025, yours truly will definitely be starring in a Disney Plus show. 32 episodes, all about Paste Pop Pete. Absolutely no guest stars, but firmly set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Promise. Anyway, I think that the first book by Brubaker and Phillips that I read as them as a team was Sleeper. Sleeper was about it was sort of a crime book, but it was definitely set within the Wildstorm superhero universe. And it was about a guy who went undercover essentially to work for a terrorist organization that uses powered villains. But then his handler, the only guy that knows that he's working like for the government, goes into a coma. That was John Lynch, who used to be like, the leader of Gen 13 and stuff. He went into a coma. And so the main guy can't get out. And it's like, well, how long do I just stay here working undercover? And how far do I go? Who can I hurt or kill to keep under, or should I run away and get away from this? Carver was his name. Great story. Somebody that's undercover and has to make these constant daily decisions of how long is he going to stay undercover and what is he going to do to stay undercover. Really, really just puts the character on the back foot for the whole run. Great stories. Great stories. Oh, or here's a different opinion. Wally says, didn't care for it. Wally, totally entitled to your opinion. I know that not everything is for everyone. I'm just saying what I did. I loved it. Oh, I don't think so, Mars. I really don't think so. I think that Ed Brubaker can definitely balance both. I think he loves comics too much to walk away from it. I really don't think he'd walk away from comics. I really don't think so. Have I ever read anything by Rich Tommaso? He does the crime noir genre as well. I don't think so. So I'd be very curious. Anyway, I really enjoyed everything I've read by them. Fade Out, Kill or Be Killed, Criminal, Pulp. Good stuff. Incognito. They're a great team. I think we've talked before about great teams because of those guys, but let's move on. I've got a bunch of pieces of DC Universe movie news at this point, because this week James Gunn announced a bunch, not all, but a bunch of the slate of movies for the DC. Like their sort of first chapter, they're calling Gods and Monsters. There's a lot to it. But I did a live stream already this week talking about that specifically, reacting to James Gunn's announcements. So I don't want to recap all that. You can watch that as its own short dedicated video. Let's talk about some of the fallout of these announcements of upcoming projects. So the first one is he announced, James Gunn being he, announced roughly an 8 to 10 year plan for DC, for their movies. And in following up on that, there's this guy, Jeff Schneider, who writes for Above the Line, sort of an industry, sort of gossip, sort of trade publication. And he said that what they're looking to do right now, DC's and Warner Brothers, they're looking to sign their actors to 10-year contracts because they want to make sure that they're available for things like, TV shows, video games. They want to like keep their cast locked in and consistent. And you know what? I mean, that's not too different from what Marvel did and continues to do. So that makes sense. I'm not really surprised by that news. 10 years is a long time in some ways, but usually that ends up being something like 3 movies, more or less. Maybe a cameo or two, too. Following up on the first piece of news there, George Santos just claimed that he signed a 10-year contract with DC, and he is the next Superman. We haven't heard any actual cast announcements yet. And also, James Gunn said that, like, even though he announced a bunch of these movies and TV shows, that is not everything for their first chapter. It's just a bunch of stuff for their first chapter. So there's still more news to come. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. But I've got more news about the DCU. For instance, I thought this was kind of cool and also kind of frustrating. James Gunn announced a bunch of projects, and that announcement video included referring to specific comic book runs and using comic book images from certain comics, and that has led to a bunch of them selling out. Booster Gold sold out. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis Evely sold out. The Authority, that first trade paperback by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch, that's sold out. So in some ways, cool. The announcement got people to go for those comics, and it sold out. And on Twitter, by the way, James Gunn has been mentioning the comics and a lot of times the creators. He's been doing a good job at mentioning and plugging the comics. I appreciate that. I think that's great. Here's the thing. Why are they selling out? Where's the synergy here? It's like the DC studios and the DC comics, they didn't seem to talk and go like, oh, this is what's getting announced on January 31st. Cool. Let's make sure that we have extra copies of these trade paperbacks published in time for this announcement, because guess what? That's probably going to interest a lot of people. That's leaving money on the table for the comic side. The amount of comics sold to the amount of tickets sold is already disproportionately crazy. Way more people know about, movie Batman than comic book Batman. That's just the fact, right? But they could have at least tried to publish a bunch more copies of the stuff that they're saying, hey, guess what? We're going to be pulling from All-Star Superman. We're going to be pulling from The Authority by Ellis and Hitch. They could have been saying, they knew that they were going to be saying stuff like that. They knew that they were going to use images of this stuff. Have those comics published, like reprinted in big quantities. It drove me nuts that the two sides did not communicate like that. That is just dumb. That is dumb. Let's see. I was mainly reading Human Target. I didn't know he was writing Supergirl. He wrote an incredible 8-issue story, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, made my top 10 list of 2022. Great story. Great basis for a Supergirl story. Shows her, accurate personality-wise, but in a different light than Superman. Tells a really unique, cool story. Love it. Great idea for adapting. Great idea. Only complaint I really have thus far, because nothing's come out yet, but like only complaint I have is why did they not have a bunch of new editions printed and ready to go? Just seems like poor planning. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a guy with a marketing degree that loves comic books, right? I think the world is definitely ready for Midnighter and Apollo. I think the timing is definitely right for live action. They're an interesting couple. It is a win for sales. I agree. That's the positive. It got people to go out and order this stuff. But the bad is that if it's sold out already within less than a week, they could have sold a lot more by now. And people will probably, like when it gets reprinted in, a month or two, they'll sell a bunch more. But they could have sold even more. They could have had those comics in even more people's hands. So, whatever. And it's also, I guess I could have mentioned this, but, speculation-wise, the back issues are, of course, heating up. I've heard that, things like the first issue of the Grant Morrison Batman and Robin run, that's going for like $500 or so now. So, it's not nothing. The back issues market is also heated up. But that already exists. I'm saying that, like, just in terms of planning, next time you guys announce some of these projects, maybe consider having a bunch of print editions ready to go. If you need to hire me and pay me a huge salary, DC, fine. I'll grudgingly accept and give you some of these common sense ideas. I don't know. Let's move forward with even more DCU news. James Gunn announced a 10-year plan. We're in 2023. First movie for Superman that starts this new DCU comes out in 2025. If we say that that's about 10 years, that takes us through 2035. Sounds pretty far in the future, but this stuff tends to go faster than you'd think, all things considered. Well, remember, we do have public domain laws here, and Superman has been around for a minute. Under the current law for public domain, which was last updated in 1978, I think. I'm not an expert on copyright law, but I believe 1978 was when we last updated this. It meant that characters would enter the public domain 95 years after their creation. Now, things like trademarks, the specific application, the specific iteration of a character, that can be owned by a company, just to be clear. Winnie the Pooh, just for instance, went into the public domain. But you can't create a Winnie the Pooh that looks just like and sounds like the Disney animated version. You can't do that, okay? But obviously you can use the idea of Winnie the Pooh. There's a horror movie out there called Blood and Honey, where like supposedly the Winnie the Pooh and those animals have gone feral by being abandoned by Christopher Robin. Now they're out and killing. Okay, you can do that. And you're not really cribbing off of like Disney's take on Winnie the Pooh. So Superman will be entering the public domain under the current laws 2034, Batman the following year in 2035, Wonder Woman follows pretty soon after that, 2037. That ain't that far from now. don't get me wrong. I'm sure that others is going to be trying to case that stuff should stay in the public domain another like 10 or 20 years. But 95 years has already pushed it well past the original ideas of where it should be. This stuff will enter the public domain. That said, when it enters the public domain, it's not necessarily super clear cut. In fact, James Gunn was asked about this, and he has an interesting quote here that I will now read to you in full. It has the F word, so, put your earmuffs on if you need to. So he's asked about, Superman potentially entering the public domain, and James Gunn said, it's a very complicated issue. It's not cut and dry. There's a lot of technical stuff around what pieces actually enter the public domain, which you may or may not know about. So there's that. But there's also, that's one of the reasons why we have Superman, and that's why we're bringing the authority into mainstream. I mean, who would have thought 11 years ago that the two most popular rides in the world are Guardians of the Galaxy ride? Two of the most popular rides in the world are based on a comic that fucking 20,000 people knew. That's a little more than that, James, but okay. And so being able to try to create these other properties, use our diamonds, our Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, to prop up our Booster Golds or Green Lanterns or Plastic Mans or whatever is important. So he's saying, use the characters that everybody knows right now, but start introducing the newer stuff for the future. And he's right about not everything about Superman enters the public domain in 2034. What would enter is just what's in that first story. But, like ideas like flying or kryptonite, that would come later. Superman's costume would have to look just like the one that was in the first issue, not like, say, the costume from 1986 or 2005 or something like that. That doesn't enter the public domain. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to get into there. But it will be an interesting couple of years now as we start getting closer. Like, will some of our favorite comic book characters enter the public domain? It's possible. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of forgotten Golden Age stuff that already has. You could make, theoretically, a Blue Beetle story. Blue Beetle is in the public domain. But you can't make your Blue Beetle like the DC Comics version of the Blue Beetle. Yes, Alex Brown. Fletcher Hanks, his crazy stuff is definitely in the public domain. Could definitely do that. Yeah, Dynamite Thor, that's public domain. A lot of this stuff is. Makoto knows the comic tropes history. Yes, Big Dicks is in the public domain. Blue Beetle's arch enemy, Big Dicks. It's DIX. I'm not saying anything offensive. I'm allowed to say that. Clay says you can already make Blue Beetle action figures. Yeah, you just have to make it look specifically like the very first version, the Garrett. Public domain news is easier to follow when it comes to movies. Comic stuff is too complicated because comics is serialized and keeps going and going and going versus like, King Kong, basically like one story, boom, it's in the public domain. It's interesting. It's interesting. But guess what? That isn't even the last of the DCU news that I have for you. I hope you're ready for even more. What? They've hired their first director? Okay, that's slightly misleading. But according to the Hollywood Reporter, James Mangold is in talks to direct one of these announced projects, specifically Swamp Thing. Yes. And Mangold tweeted an image of Swamp Thing, an image by Swamp Thing's co-creator, Bernie Wrightson. Bernie Wrightson and Len Wein created a pretty iconic monster. And James Gunn retweeted that tweet by Mangold of just an image of it. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Mangold approached DC Studios saying, I would love to do a horror movie version of Swamp Thing. You guys are going to do Swamp Thing? Like, please consider me. It wouldn't be immediate. First of all, like, his latest movie is the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, whatever that means. That's coming out soon. And next he's doing a biopic, I think, on Bob Dylan, I think. Anyway, but then he would theoretically be free. So yeah, he might be the first director signed on because he's at least in discussions. He apparently is very interested. Keep in mind, he's done superhero stuff. He did Logan. I think we all agree Logan was a good comic book movie. So yeah, James Mangold on Swamp Thing sounds good to me. Oh, yeah. Did he do Identity? I forgot that was him. Yeah, Identity was interesting. Stylish, anyway. Stylish. There you go. I hope our King Bissett gets paid from this, but probably not. Who knows? People have said that DC is better at reimbursing their creators for their movies than Marvel is. An actually scary film of Swamp Thing would be really cool. I never saw, did anybody else out there watch that Swamp Thing TV show that I think was supposed to be horror? And if so, was it any good? I never saw that. Yeah, a lot of people saying that they really liked Logan, so respect there. Swamp Thing hasn't been the same since Dick Durock passed away, aka Old Man Hulk from the TV series. Yeah, Swamp Thing definitely looked pretty strange in that USA TV show, that's for sure. Okay, people talking about the Swamp Thing TV show. Wasn't that bad. The newer one. There was also the Wes Craven movie. There were two movies. Let's see. I saw it. It was really good. Okay. The Swamp Thing TV show was great. Wow. Yeah. That was a bummer what happened on that. Basically, Warner Brothers wanted to make a Swamp Thing TV show and found a state where they were going to get a tax credit, right? Which I think was North Carolina. They do a bunch of TV shows down there. And then as soon as they started filming, North Carolina was like, oh, we actually got it wrong. Like the tax credit we quoted you is going to be like many, many millions less. And DC was like, we budgeted for a show that we could produce at X number of dollars. If we don't get that tax credit, it costs Y number of dollars. We can't make the numbers work. And we've already gone into production. So that's why it got canceled early and fell all apart. They had basically started it with the understanding that they were going to get a certain tax credit that the state backed out on. Was it Georgia? Mian says it was Georgia. For some reason, I had been thinking North Carolina, but okay. Anyway, it's just frustrating. I remember seeing that news, and it basically got announced as being canceled right as soon as they started it. Yeah, okay. Thank you for the extra information there, Keith. They canceled simultaneous with the first episode. That's not a great way to get people on board with your program. That's not great. Yeah, I've heard that Guillermo del Toro is interested in Swamp Thing and Justice League Dark. Don't get me wrong. Guillermo del Toro could do a great job at that. But the thing about Guillermo is he expresses interest in a lot of projects, and a lot of them do not see fruition. He acts like he's committed to way more than he can actually get done. So when you hear Guillermo del Toro's name attached to something, you really have to learn to not get your hopes up because he can't do everything he talks about doing. Okay. I would love it if he did some sort of a comic book thing. I think he'd be a great fit. I really do. He's got a great visual style. I think he speaks in a language that's very comic book like, Pacific Rim. That's like a comic book. He did the Hellboy movies. It's not quite like Mike Mignola's, but it's still a comic book aesthetic. He could do a great job, but my expectations of him being involved in the DC universe are kind of small, just because he does not complete everything he commits to. Anyway, I'll keep moving on with some more news. Oh, that's right. He did Blade 2. Excuse me. He did Blade 2. Yep. He did Blade 2. I think, yeah, like Andrew says, he commits to about 3 projects and only completes one of them. I feel like it's more like 1 out of every 6 or something, but I could be wrong. You know, there's lots of things he said he would do. Hobbit. That's just like one of the more prominent ones, but he also commits to a lot of like other ideas that like you don't always hear about unless you read the industry publications. One more piece of news. Look, that was so cool. Let me let my stream catch up. Actor Curran Walters, he played the Jason Todd version of Robin on the Titans TV show, as well as Red Hood. Well, on Twitter, Curran Walters responded to the announcement of a Brave and the Bold, Batman movie that would focus on Batman and his son Damian, saying, I'm a phone call away. That's all cool and all, but keep in mind, Curran Walters is 25 now, and Damian is supposed to be about 14. Maybe you hire a guy a little older than that, but I feel like that's too much of an age discrepancy already. Keeping in mind that, this Batman movie probably won't come out for, at the earliest, 3 years from now. Guy's pushing 30 by then. I don't know if he's the right fit for Damian Wayne. I think that they're going to have to cast that one really close to the movie going into production to get somebody on the younger side to make it work. And that character can age up, and that's fine. But initially, I think you're going to want to probably go with an unknown that's pretty young. That is totally agree with you, James. Damian, tough to cast. But so is Harry Potter, and they kind of nailed that. They got some kids. There are ways to cast for kids, I think, where the casting directors, what they like to do when possible is hire an actor who has an older sibling so that they can look at how that, photos of how that sibling aged and try to guess, will this kid be somewhat likely to maintain their look over the next couple of years? That's legit something that I know casting directors look at. But of course, the biggest news is it's already been cast. Yeah, it's already been cast. Victor has the news right here. George Santos says that he can play Damian Wayne as he is 15 years old. So there you go. We've got it. George Santos will be playing Damian Wayne. You thought that he just produced the Spider-Man musical? No. He's also going to be playing Damian Wayne because he's the right age. They should cast me as Damian. I'll flatter myself and say maybe I look younger than I actually am, but pretty sure I can't play a 14-year-old. I think that he has aged from ballpark 10 to 14 in the time that he has existed as a character. Comics are loose with stuff like that, but Damian, I'd be surprised if they cast somebody younger than, say, 14 or 15, but might be playing a little younger. Anyway, let's move on to some other news. DC cutting writers' pay? There's a little bit more to this than my somewhat clickbaity, but this isn't inaccurate. And hey, I play the game. I want to get clicks on my videos. This comes from a Bleeding Cool report, and they're a little gossipy, but sometimes their sources are right. They said that they heard from the Pasadena Comic-Con something specific, and this is a quote from Bleeding Cool, all right? We've heard that there are complaints from writers who have discovered that after writing such a spin-off book for a DC Comics event, in other words, not the main book, but a spin-off related to it, They are then told that their agreed amount to write the book will be cut, halved in some cases, as the fee has to be shared with the instigator and showrunner of the event. So DC has changed some of these things. It used to be that an editor might come up with the idea for a big event and they would shepherd that through. But DC, at least, has sort of put that on one writer to sort of oversee an event, write the main title. That's my understanding anyway. But like the complaint is that supposedly that then DC says, well, some of the money for this spinoff that you wrote actually has to go to the writer that came up with the event to compensate them for organizing it or something. It's like, wait a minute, what? Like, honestly, that makes no sense to me that DC would try to make the argument that like, we gotta pay this guy for creating the event. Fine, I get that. Why would it possibly have to come out of the agreed upon salary for the person writing the spinoff or that book? Like, you've got money to pay writers. Just say this is what you get paid for writing this book. Like, that makes no sense to me. It makes zero sense. Just to be clear, Bleeding Cool did put an update into this that I saw. Mark Waid wrote to Bleeding Cool, and he pointed out, like, hey, myself and Jean Lun Yang, we've been the people that have shepherded some recent events. Just to be clear, we have not taken any pay from any other writers. And Bleeding Cool was like, yes, that is the truth as far as we know. We did not hear a complaint. They were the people that got a bump of pay from a spinoff writer. Weird. I do not know what to make of that. Because it's not coming out of DC editorial's pocket. Yeah, it's like, do they just have a budget and then retroactively though say that some of the money has to come back that we promised you to go to this other, what? Then don't offer them that original fee. What is this changing the amount afterwards? What is that? What industry do you change the money after the work is completed? I understand there might be some cases where, say, somebody couldn't finish something and somebody else stepped in to complete some pages. Yeah, I agree. Some of the money should come out of what they were promised to pay that other team. Fine, that kind of stuff I get. But otherwise, this is just weird. Yeah, why can't people just be paid and have stress-free jobs? I do not know. Look, again, this is coming from one source, Bleeding Cool. They heard it from somebody that they trust. But by the time I'm telling it, that's at least third hand, if not fourth. So I will say, let's take it with a grain of salt. Maybe somebody did complain about this, but maybe it's a time deal or something that doesn't has something that we don't understand going on. I don't know. But that wasn't how the article is positioned. So I don't know. I also just don't know how much could these other writers really be managing the spin-off books. That's for an editor to do. What do editors at the big two do anymore? I know that there's some that are very well respected, but it's I just don't understand. There's no transparency is all I'll say with exactly what an editor at Marvel and DC do anymore. Are they just proofreading? Are they continuity people? Or are they shepherding the project? What exactly are they doing? I don't know. I don't really know. I would love some clarity on that. Diana has a great point here. Bleeding Cool will sometimes take gossip and blow it up. They're reporting on something, there's not a to this, so it's essentially gossip. and I'm probably adding that there. But I'm just saying, if it's true, I'm utterly confused. I'm utterly confused as to what this could mean. In fact, I'm so confused, I have nothing else to say. Let's move on. This sounded fun to me. This, I think, sounded fun. Injustice, very popular set of video games, set in like an alternate DC world, became a very popular set of comics. And they were written by Tom Taylor, mostly. Tom Taylor has been writing the John Kent Superman comic and is now doing a 6-issue story called Adventures of Superman, John Kent. Cool. Well, here's the twist. Now that we've seen the covers, we realize this is actually a multiverse story. This is not just more John Kent. This is John Kent going into the world of Injustice. So it's been several years since Injustice has been represented anywhere, but the Injustice world, the biggest thing I would say that's different is the Joker tricked Superman into accidentally killing Lois Lane. He became a tyrant. He became like, he wasn't going to let anything bad happen again. He became a tyrant. It created like a whole world of changes. It's an evil Superman story. Tom Taylor was sort of just getting into comics when he started writing that. And he said, like, I created some stories that I'm proud of, but it also, like, I don't really feel like Superman could ever go that dark. At least not the real Superman. He's like, no matter what happened to him, I just don't think he would actually do that. So he wanted a chance, though, to play with this Superman, explore it a little bit more. And, like, what if he could see his son? So I think that sounds like an interesting story. Yeah, I'm excited about this. I want to read this. I think that sounds cool. I think it sounds cool. Hello, Sigamigs. Yes, Chemdog, Bleeding Cool does exaggerate. So I don't know how many people are keeping up to date with Superman stuff. I don't know how many of you know the Injustice comics or the Injustice video games. I haven't played the Injustice video games. I've heard that they're pretty good, but I haven't played them myself, so I don't really know. You know why I didn't? I'm bad at fighting games. I have no skill there. No skill. So bad. I can't remember the right button combos, and even when I can, I don't seem to have the dexterity to pull those combos off fast enough. I used to like the Mortal Kombat games when I was younger, but I just sort of got to a point where I had no aptitude for them. But I personally love the idea of exploring that version of Superman against his son, and I think it's a good idea. The Injustice games are fun, but the movie was pretty meh. Oh, did they make an animated movie? I didn't know that. I'm just putting that together from what you're telling me. Injustice, like a comic, is really overrated. The plot is too edgy for their own sake. All I know is I think it was fairly popular. I didn't read it. But I do like a lot of what Tom Taylor's doing. Man, his Nightwing stuff is great. You can play as Spawn in 11. Oh, Mortal Kombat 11. Right. The animated movie is hollow. It's a little one note, which I think you can sometimes get away with in a video game a lot easier. If you want to create a video game and say Superman's evil, that's a lot easier than actually making sense of it. Oh. That hurt. I have, as of yesterday, a knot in my back. And when I breathe deeply or twist in a certain way, it hurts. That hurt a lot just now. Oh, that hurt. John Kent needs a new code name? Maybe. George Soros created DCU, and I believe he also invented fighting video games. Shoulder's also not perfect. It's better. I'm doing exercises and stuff like that. I've got a torn rotator cuff on this side, and that's also the side I've got the knot in. So, man, I don't want to talk about it too much because it makes me sound old. I don't want to sound old. Instead, I want to talk about some comic book news. The Newsarama co-founder moved on. Michael Duran. Thought this was an interesting little bit of comic book history. So let me recap a few things here. Michael Duran co-founded what became Newsarama all the way back in 1998, and it even dates back a little before that. He started doing articles about comic books back in 1995. The internet as a shared medium was definitely in its infancy then. He was using Prodigy, and he put his articles under something called the Prodigy Comic Book Newswire. That eventually morphed to become something called the Comics Newswire. It wasn't exclusive to Prodigy anymore. Prodigy was an internet service provider back in the day, if you don't know. Then it was Newswire, and then finally Newsarama. And then Newsarama became its own dedicated site, not just sort of, articles for other places. It became Newsarama as its own site around 2002, with funding, by the way, from Kevin Smith. Now, Duran briefly moved on to Marvel to be their marketing communications director, but he did return. But anyway, this week, surprise, there's no comment on it or anything, but he's moved on. And I thought that was interesting because as far as I know, that means that there's only one staff person still attached to Newsarama, which was bought by like the video game site Games Radar several years ago. George Marston was one of the staff writers. He writes news articles, and they do freelance stuff, but I'm pretty sure George Marston is the only remaining person at Newsarama. All that combined makes me wonder if Newsarama is going to continue to exist for much longer. I don't know. Yes. Newsarama is on Games Radar now. You can still just look up Newsarama in its own sort of site, but it's hosted by Games Radar. So, yeah. Let's see. Michael Duran's co-founder for Newsarama was George Santos, right? You guys know. The last edition of Newsarama was a bit hard to read last I checked. I feel like the one on Games Radar is easy enough to navigate, but that's me. But they don't have a lot of staff, so yeah, not a lot that they can do now. They don't have nearly as many articles as some of the other, sort of comic book news sites like, I don't know, Comic Book Resources and comicbook.com, places like that. I'm just drawing a little bit, and I'll jump into the comments and see what's being said in just a moment. How's the inking going? Asks Andrew Jefferson. It's going all right. I've really only got one panel because I keep sort of talking about the news this week, but that's okay. That's okay, right? I just realized I don't have a template for my balloons. So my lettering is probably going to be pretty wonky on this, but hopefully that's okay. Can we see the artwork? Sure. All right. So I'm making a comic strip based on the trailers that I've seen for Picard Season 3. Thoughts on the Titans, Jean-Luc? Honestly, Will, it's a bit darker than I'm used to. Boy, you said it, sir. Holy shit! And I'm just going to have the backgrounds just like total like dark, like throw them into a lot of dark shadows. The lighting on Picard is just so unlike what Next Generation was. Like how are these people doing their jobs in that darkness? I get that they're going for a mood, but like it feels like if you were running a spaceship in just utter blackness, you're going to make some mistakes. I could make a lot of comic strips based on how physically dark Picard looks. So, yeah, I'm just having fun with a silly little comic strip here. I probably won't finish it tonight. Excellent. Fire at will. Hit like the other 50% of you. Oh, are there a bunch of likes? Thank you. If you hit like, that helps the channel. Thank you. Let's see. The word on the street is the Picard season is going to rule. I hope it does. I've got a lot of affection for the Next Generation crew. Picard seasons 1 and 2 have been fine. They're very different. Picard and Discovery, they're very hit and miss for me. They're very hit and miss. It doesn't always feel tonally like Star Trek. Personally, I do love Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I don't know if everybody does, but to me, I think it might be my favorite Star Trek. I love Strange New Worlds. Each episode tells its own story. There's a little bit of serialized character work, which is good. I think the characters are interesting. I think that they're doing just really good traditional Star Trek, exploring scientific ideas and stuff. I love it. Okay. Your explanation. Keith says, on Picard, they have nanotech that lets them see in the dimness. Honestly, Will, it's a bit dark. Are you there? And then I'm going to have Geordi back here going like, boy, you said it, sir. And Picard just go, holy shit. Let's see. Prodigy and Strange New Worlds are the best shows. Okay. I haven't watched the Prodigy show, so I didn't watch it. Maybe they're dimming the lights on the ship to get more workers' comp. Maybe. I didn't really like Picard season 1. Did it get any better? It's so hard to say, EJ, in that like it's still kind of a dark tone, but season 2 was definitely a very different story from season 1. I think I liked season 1 more, so you might not like that. But season 3, we're getting the entire Next Gen cast back, so it'll at least be interesting in that level and hopefully give us a little more closure for those characters than the movie Nemesis gave us, which just wasn't a great way to end those characters' run. I don't know. Let's see. Andrew Jefferson says, not a Trek fan, but I've been enjoying Lower Decks. I've seen season 1 of Lower Decks and I like it. Fran G says, I enjoyed Picard. Let's see. Mod DJ says, season 2 is weird. It's shot mostly in LA. Yeah, it was a weird time travel thing. Keith says, excellent Sir Patrick impression. Oh, thank you. So, speaking of like doing a Picard impression, totally had forgotten about this, but in college, I did step improv and made a silly little sketch comedy show with my classmates. If you've ever like, I don't know how many of you know, like one of my friends is Ken Jeong, Dr. Ken, Hangover, Masked Singer. If you don't know who he is, but if you do, he's a buddy. It's because we did like this sketch comedy show and improv and stand up and stuff together while I was in college. Good friend. That was a different life, like I didn't stay with that. But on this sketch comedy show, and keep in mind, this was the 90s, we did one that was called The Real World Star Trek, as in it was that MTV show, The Real World, to the generation tired or something like that. And I played Picard, and my version of Picard was also sort of like a jerk that like the rest of the housemates didn't really like. You know, like I took a barrette and put it across my eyes and I was like, hey guys, look at me. I'm Geordie. I can't see. And like then Geordie comes up behind me and everyone's like, you know, not cool. And yeah, that was funny. So that was me doing a Picard impression back in, what was that, like 90, I don't know, late 90s. Yes, yes. Ken Jeong, Spanish teacher Chang, El Tigre. Ken's awesome. Ken's great. Also, he was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Remember, with he was the security guard that in Avengers Endgame, watching over Ant-Man's van when Ant-Man came out of the quantum realm. So my friend was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let's get back to some comic book news. There's a few more pieces. Look at that. Great. I chose a good one there. Lunar wants fans to spy on comic shops. That's my take on this. Lunar, by the way, is a distributor. They distribute DC's comics specifically. And let me talk to you a little bit about some history of distribution stuff. For the longest time, Diamond was the only distributor. During that time, they had sort of a special thing that they would do where they would let some comic book stores get the comic books early. Comic books at the time were set to come out on Wednesdays, but Diamond would sometimes get some of these stores the books on Mondays and Tuesdays, just so that the store could have time to catalog them and organize them and then have them ready for Wednesday. They were not allowed to sell them early. And if they broke the street date, Diamond sent around secret shoppers to tattle on them. Well, Lunar puts out DC Comics a day early, technically. They give comic stores comics on Tuesdays, not Wednesdays, even though most of us still do our comic shopping on Tuesday. At least I do, because then everything's out, right? Well, they've got a new thing. They put out sort of a press release announcement here. This is from Lunar Distribution directly. They said, street date policy reminder. As a reminder, all DC books have an on-sale date of Tuesday. Any violations of street date may result or can result in the temporary loss of early delivery for your store. Continued violations may result in the permanent loss of early delivery for your store. Oh, okay. And then they put this out. And this part is at us, the person that shops and buys the comics at our beloved local comic book stores. If you wish to report a store's violation of this policy, oh yeah, that's what we're all out to do, right? Tattle on our local comic shop. If you wish to report a store's violation of this policy, please direct your concern to blah, 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 blah. Please note that Lunar requires proof that an item was available to purchase and receive prior to the on-sale date of Tuesday in order to take action. Proof of early sale can be provided in a variety of ways, such as a physical receipt, a purchase confirmation, or a photo video of the item on display for sale in the store. Fine. I get it that you don't want a store to be selling stuff early. That's an unfair competitive advantage to other people that you provide. But you're going to aim that at us? Like, who here is like, my comic book store, those guys have it way too good, and they've had it way too good for way too long. I'm taking them down a peg. I'm going to make sure that they don't get their comics or don't get them on time. Like, why? What is in that for us? We make it a little harder to get the comics that we like at the store that we shop at. It's not like there's so many comic book stores that we're all like, oh, You know, it's like a Starbucks. There's a comic store on every corner these days. I just can't decide where to get them from. I just get my comics from whoever's closest. And if one of those places is shifty and they're putting out those Superman comics a day early, nah, that don't fly with me. I'm taking that shop down. Nobody's going to do that, right? Who out there has a vendetta against a comic book store? That just sounds crazy. This is, yeah. Andy's like, if you wish to be a narc, yeah, step one, tattle on your comic book store. I don't even think that this is much of an issue. I really don't. Look at that. That's not cool. Calm down, Lunar. Lunar's smoking something. I don't know. These comic shops, they're just too powerful. And I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of them selling detective comics on Monday nights. It's too much. I'm not letting them get away with it. Hi, Lunar? Yeah, I've got something to tattle about. You sit down. You're going to want to hear about this. I went into my comic book shop on Tuesday, and the comics were there, but I heard that they were out on Monday. That's what I heard. Right. They're not even offering us a bribe to tattle on our comic shop. Even if you don't love your comic shop, like maybe you've been to better ones in the past, but if you're going to a comic book store regularly, you probably are like, yeah, you know, even if they don't give me a good deal or something, you don't usually want them to go out of business because, let's face it, our options are somewhat limited. There's a few cities that have a bunch of comic book stores. If you go into downtown Portland, Oregon, if you go into New York City, good news. Those places happen to have a bunch of great comic shops. LA used to, not as many anymore. But even like in a pretty good sized city like Seattle or Boston, there's only like 2 or 3 stores, and they're not necessarily that close to each other. So just crazy to me to think that like they're like, hey, do you want to get your comic store in trouble? Like, not really, not especially. I'm good. Spike, I absolutely agree with you. If there's a store out there selling early, it can lead to piracy. There's people uploading that stuff. It's hurting sales for everyone. It fuels weird speculation trends on places like eBay. If like somebody's putting a variant cover up like, you know, a day, 2 days early than it's supposed to be on store shelves, it's not fair. It's not right. I just don't think that this is such an overwhelming problem that Lunar needs to reach out to us to be like, let's shut this shit down. I don't know. You know, maybe if I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and Lunar the benefit of the doubt, though, maybe there is some stuff like with like piracy or speculation that's weird that I'm not hearing about. Maybe there is. I don't know. Even then, I'm not sure I'd want to tattle on my comic shop. I might like talk to them and be like, hey, you know, when you put this stuff out, you're hurting yourself because what you're doing is like, you know, you might lead to piracy. And then guess what? Less people are going to come to your store and buy your comics. That like hurts you long term. I might talk to a store owner like that if I thought something like that was happening. It doesn't help them. It legit, like, what a short-term win for a comic store if they sell the comic early. What a short-term win. Because you are going to hurt yourself long-term if you sell it early. You are. You're going to hurt the industry by selling it early. Anyway. Here's a positive. Let's sort of transition from that sort of weird story to something I was really happy to see. NPD Bookscan produces a lot of the statistics on sales of books, and not necessarily the weekly comic books, but certainly graphic novels, manga, stuff like that that gets sold in stores. And they have a lot of the numbers for that stuff that gets ordered by comic book stores too. Well, here's the good news, and I'm going to put it in context that really makes it even better. Sales in graphic novels are up 1.8% for all of 2022 over the previous year. And the good news there is 2021 had already had a huge bump up. The pandemic had people reading more comics. No question about it. It was good for business. It really was. Let's see. Compared with sales in the last pre-pandemic year, 2019, graphic novel sales have risen 110%. 110%. Huge numbers. Huge numbers. Manga sales, to be fair, made up for the majority of sales. I think that we all know that manga sells incredibly well. That is definitely the entry point for a lot of comic book readers. That and young adult graphic novels. The stuff like, by Raina Telgemeier and stuff like Dogman that's sold at Walmarts and Targets and bookstores. That stuff is comics, and it's huge. It's huge. Manga was up 12% over 2021. Sales of young adult graphic novels were even more, 21%. Huge numbers. But I'm of the opinion that a rising tide lifts all boats. You sell more manga and you sell more young adult graphic novels, you're getting people into comics. I think they're more likely to potentially also get into stuff like, Batman, Superman, Invincible, Walking Dead, whatever it might be. Do a power bomb. But these are good numbers. These are good. Let me put it into further context. Graphic novel sales are up. Overall book sales fell 6.5% in 2022. That's right. While books overall went down, graphic novels went up. Pretty cool, in my opinion. I think it speaks to potential a healthy industry. Even if Marvel and DC made so many mistakes, with their marketing or their distribution, that they basically had to go out of business and just put their characters into, cartoons and toys and stuff. There's still going to be comics, right? There's always going to be comics, because even if it was like for a while, like they went out of business and like manga and young adult stuff is selling well, there's going to be an appetite for other stuff, so that companies like, your Image, your IDWs, your Boom, your Dynamite, whatever it might be, your self-published stuff, that's still going to get made. Your Webtoons. I think comics are in a healthy place overall. I really do. There's always going to be some up and down with every little area that we can look at. But this is some really solid numbers. I'm really happy. The overall growth, it didn't really break down what like Marvel and DC are doing for trade paperbacks, but they both produce a lot of trade paperbacks. And think about it. They each went with their own distributor, which is going to help them get that stuff into even more places as time goes on. Marvel's teaming up with Penguin Random House. They're huge. Worldwide, that is a massive company to be involved in. That's long-term very likely to help Marvel continue to get trade paperbacks and graphic novels into more places. We haven't necessarily seen a huge change there, but some of this stuff takes a while to come up with a new plan. They've only just gotten into bed with them like last year, basically. That's a huge company. I will not be surprised to potentially see, not necessarily, will I see this everywhere? Maybe not initially, but I might see these, trade paperbacks everywhere. I think that like Marvel is in a really good position with Penguin Random House, and I'm sure DC is going to like focus as much of their energy into doing that as possible if they see how it works for Marvel. trade paperbacks are like, I think, a pretty affordable way to read comics and a pretty satisfying way to read it. I think if anything, that we may see less comics coming out on a monthly basis, and we may start to see more of them come out as like a full story in a trade paperback format. I could see that happening, possibly with the individual chapters released digitally or something for people that like want to read each little bit at a time. That could definitely be cost effective if it became unappealing to sell directly to comic book stores. But I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I really don't. I think people like going to a comic book store, picking up comics. I think people generally like that. I really do. Yeah, exactly. James Stewart points, what are Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips doing these days? They are in a position where they're successful enough that they can wait and release a whole volume of a story, which is essentially a trade paperback, like a big, thick story every 6 months or so. They do like 2 books a year, but it's the equivalent of doing like the monthly thing, but they put it out as a complete story. And I think it helps sales-wise. I really do. I like reading Reckless that way. I find it very satisfying. I told you guys, I'm on a binge with manga these days. It's very satisfying to be able to read this stuff quickly. I'll tell you, one of the things I wish Marvel and DC would bring back, but Marvel used to have these fantastic editions of their comics compiled. What was it called? Not their omnibus. It was called Essentials. Marvel Essentials. An affordable, fantastic way to binge read comics. They would collect all the consecutive stories for that character. Say it was like Ghost Rider and he had like a guest appearance or something. They're going to have his issues plus the guest appearances. They published it in black and white so that it was cheaper. You could get a big, thick volume and you could just binge through it. You could read all the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Fantastic Four in something like 3 volumes or something. It was a really cost-satisfying way to read comics, in my opinion. I hope that they bring that back at some point. I think that the Essentials volumes were a great, great way of getting people into comics or helping read back issues at an affordable price. Like if you can read something like 50 issues for $10, a lot of comic book fans will definitely be willing to do that versus, pirating or something like that. They'll definitely be willing to do that. Thank you, Andy, for backing me up. The big black and white phone books were the best. A great way of reading the comics. And actually, I like colors. I do. But for the cost savings, I loved it. And it really let you focus sometimes. Some colors are great. Some are only okay. But it let you focus on the artwork. I loved seeing Jack Kirby's art, just line art. It was great. I loved it. Loved it. Oh, thank you. Tig Goblin just came in with a similar comment. Great to see the original inks without the color clutter. Yeah. I have nothing against the color, but that's a really efficient way of doing it. And think, if they wanted to publish them the same size as a Tankobon, and say you're like 10 years old, and you've just discovered, oh, I love the Chainsaw Man anime. I'm going to read some of the manga because a lot of kids do that. But then you also see Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, Batman in like the same size, also black and white. Really cool artwork by, current people that you love that are awesome. Like, I don't know, Daniel Warren Johnson's Beta Ray Bill story or something, or Andy Kuhn. Why can't Marvel and DC publish their stuff sort of essential style the same way? Wouldn't that also be a cool way to keep tabs on where you are? Because look, I understand Avengers is going to get rebooted every couple of years in the numbering, right? And fortunately, Marvel and DC are pretty good about including legacy numbering as well that helps you understand where it is, but they haven't always been. But if you put it in an order, and I no longer have to worry about like, oh, it went from issue 798 to issue 1 through 14, and then to another issue 1 through 12, and then it went back to like issue 856 forward. Like, that's confusing. But if you can compile it like that, I would love it. I would love it. Give it to me in the same size. Get that price. Do it. It's not hard. You don't have to duplicate mangas. You don't have to duplicate anything, okay? I don't expect Marvel and DC to figure out how to do Shonen Jump and instantly make everybody go, I want DC's Shonen Jump with Wonder Woman and Batman and stuff. Culturally, it's a hurdle. It's not going to happen overnight. It just isn't. But you could compile the stuff in very affordable volumes, and that gets people into it. And that concludes my rant. All right. We've got a few more pieces of news. This is a long episode, but viewership has actually gone up while this episode's been going on. So I think I'm okay. Let's talk about some upcoming cool comics. I've got 2 that I want to talk about. First, Grant Morrison, Liam Sharp. Great creators. Really respect the hell out of both of them. They had worked on a Green Lantern run that was pretty popular and acclaimed. On Grant Morrison's Substack, they announced something new to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. And by the way, the Substack's name is Xanadu. Grant Morrison announced that they are again going to collaborate with Liam Sharp on some sort of sci-fi book called Eden's End. That's all we know so far, okay? We know what it's called. We've got this one image here. We know the creators involved. Can't tell you the plot. Can't tell you the characters. All I can tell you is Grant said that they would announce more details on the Substack soon. That's a paid subscription thing that you need to pay to get access to, but maybe you want to. Sounds interesting. Let me move on to one other comic that I wanted to mention. This sounded cool to me too. Something called Project Monarch, and that's by Michael Avon Oeming and Victor Santos. So here's the pitch for it. Okay, I'm gonna read to you guys the pitch. Legendary film director Stanley Bowman, clearly a stand-in for Stanley Kubrick. Okay, and I love Kubrick, so I was in on this. Has been indoctrinated into a Faustian deal that has ruined his life. He faked the moon landing, manipulated viral celebrity meltdowns, and filmed dozens of conspiracies to serve the goals of the Illuminati. But he gets questioned when he is forced to create an occult film so powerful, the public will fall under complete control. Only his adopted child star assassins can save him, his family, and expose the truth. All right, so we've got conspiracy theories. We've got sort of a Stanley Kubrick type character. It sounds bonkers. It sounds fun. I'm in. That doesn't come out till September 26th, okay? Oeming and Santos doing the art together. Michael Oeming writing it. I don't know. Sounded cool to me. Wild premise. Yes. Non-fiction tale. Let's see. So basically, Stanley Kubrick's biography. A lot of people claim that Stanley Kubrick was hired by the US government to fake the moon landing. I do not subscribe to that. I like to give humanity credit for their accomplishment. I think it's amazing that we were able to go to the moon. I sincerely find that beautiful and amazing. An amazing accomplishment of human ingenuity. I don't want to take that away by saying that it was a conspiracy theory. I don't easily subscribe to a conspiracy theory. But as a story plot point, that's a fun jumping on point. And it's something people will understand. So I thought both of those sounded potentially interesting. Michael Oeming also has coming out really soon Project Blue Book. Just kind of like a little X-Files-y, but a look at like, the supposed alien crash landings in Area 51, is it? I forget now. 52? Whatever. And Andy sees through, reads between the lines. Victor Santos? No. That's clearly a pseudonym for George Santos. That's right. We began and ended with George Santos comic book news. Now, I don't want to take that away from Victor Santos. Not familiar with Victor too much, but just seeing the cover here. But sounds fun. Sounds fun. Let's see. NASA spoke with Kubrick about faking it as a backup plan. See, I don't even know about that. Like, whatever. Liam Sharp was supposed to attend Concord Comic Show in Canada. Okay. Well, yeah. Great. So, 2 comics that sound interesting. Eden's Project Monarch. I like to put stuff like that on people's radar when something sounds interesting. What else should I pull up? Let's see. I'll just end by plugging my buddies again, because that's the kind of guy I am this week. My pal Vincent has a new game called Street Wolves, tabletop RPG set in an 80s synthwave sort of world. You can get that as of today, first day, at tablecatgames.com. And my buddy Randy Stone has a Kickstarter that just got successfully funded as of today. Why is that not pulling up? Why is that not pulling up? Randy, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening with this. All I can say is, no, I don't want to save it. Just go away if you're going to be like that. If you go to Kickstarter, you can look up Bullet Adventures. Bullet Adventures. It just got successfully funded, so it's just an easy thing. You can jump on and get issues 2 and 3. If you haven't read it, you can add issue 1 to that. All of them are done, complete. Randy fulfills his Kickstarters very quickly, very affordable. I recommend it. And I will have very soon a video announcement of my cover for Vampirella. That is going to be a crowd-funded campaign. Let's see if we can potentially sell more copies of the variant cover than the main cover. That would be a fun goal to shoot for. Maybe that's crazy. But I think it'll be fun. Let's see. Sorry, I see a question here. Why are they using the stand-in Stanley Bowman instead of admitting George Santos faked the moon landing? I like them. They're using the last name Bowman there because even though I'm sure it's supposed to be Stanley Kubrick, of course, in 2001, the main character's last name was Bowman, the astronaut. So, is there anything else? I didn't really ink very much. I mostly got really obsessed talking to the chat and talking about the news. I only inked most of panel 1. But you know what? I'm going to finish this at some point, not tonight. I'm going to finish inking this and I'll put it on like my Twitter and Instagram pages. Okay. So got to do that. In the meantime, I'm going to focus on getting out the next Comic Tropes episode. This time, I'm doing a fun one. I'm looking at a weird golden age superhero. Somebody that had 2 names, that had 2 superhero names, in other words. Why 2? Like, 1 would have been fine. Well, he's got 2. And he also had a way too specific mission, like that would exclude helping a lot of people. Way too specific. So I think that'll be fun. And I'm excited. I'm excited to get that out. And trying to think if there's anything else for myself that I need to plug, but I don't think so. I think I plugged 2 things too fast. Randy, I will have to check that out if it's like Savage Worlds. Okay, just to be clear, Randy, I was plugging his comic on Kickstarter called Bullet Adventures. And if you're curious about the tabletop game, which is called Street Wolves, and that uses the Savage Worlds system, that's on tablecatgames.com. So I was plugging 2 different friends because Tablecat Games, that launched today. Randy's Kickstarter got successfully funded today. So I wanted to plug both of them. What's the point of having a show like this if you can't help your friends, right? I mean, what's the point? Yeah, I'll get that out as quickly as I can. Might be as late as like the weekend. I don't know. I'll go as fast as I can. but I want to be a good one. So working on it. Thank you all for joining me. Tell you what, you've been incredible tonight. You've earned the double salute. I feel like there's almost something offensive about crossing my arms like that. Maybe I need to come up with something better than that. Nah, I don't know. Salute 1, salute 2. Try to do that to a service member. They're not going to take it well. They're going to punch you in the gut. I know from experience. I don't think I have anything else, folks. So I'm going to call the show right here, right now. Let's all go sing some songs by Heart. Yeah, Heart. Sisters. Sort of heavy metal voices. Pop music in the 80s. Let's all go sing that. Take care, everybody. Keep reading comics.